e to the negative x squared does not have an antiderivative. Consequently, we can't really integrate it unless we use an approximation. Later, after chapter 11, we'd be able to do it, but at this point we can only approximate. So for part A, using the trapezoidal rule, well, we start by taking the interval, which goes from 0 to 2, dividing it into 10 equal pieces. So we need to find out what's the width of those pieces, also known as delta x. This is then equal to 2/10, and I'll just use decimal form. Now take a look at the interval as it goes from 0 to 2, and go over by 0.2 every time. So this would be 0.2, 0.4, 0.6, 0.8, 1.0, 1.2, 1.4, 1.6, 1.8, and then 2. And with the trapezoidal rule, you substitute all of these numbers into the function. These are all going to be multiplied by 2, so it's going to be 2 times the f of x. And then this one and this one, you just substitute into the function. And then all of that is multiplied by the delta x over 2. So instead of writing the, I guess I could write the e. So we would have e to the negative 0 squared, and then these middle ones are all going to have a coefficient of 2. And then 2 e to the negative 0.2 squared, plus etc., until I get to the 1.8. 2 e to the negative 1.8 squared. And then the last one is just e with a 2 substituted in. So usually I like to have the calculator add these up for me. Since these all have coefficients of 2, but these don't, what I can do is have the calculator add up all of these for me, and then I can just add those 2 in myself and finish it with that 0.2 divided by 2. So this is with sum sequence. So you go to second list, move over to math. Number 5 is the sum. Then go back to list. Under operations, there's sequence. And depending on how young or old your calculator is, it might look like this, or you might still be looking at the home screen. It ends up to be exactly the same thing. So at this point you put what's the expression. So if you're writing it on the home screen, it would look like sum sequence. Then we need to tell it, okay, add up these, which all have 2 in front. 2 e to the negative x squared, and then x is the variable, and the starting point is the 0.2. The ending point is the 1.8, and the increment is delta x, which is a 0.2. So in a second, mine's going to end up to look like that, but for the moment it looks slightly different. So the expression is 2 e to the negative x squared. The variable is x. Start at a 0.2, end at a 1.8, and the delta x is 0.2. And then it puts it on the home screen, just like this. And the answer is 7.8. Now keep in mind we still need to add this in and add this in. So this is e to the 0, which is 1. And then this is e to the negative 4. E to the negative 4. So an 8.818. We still need to do this part, which a 0.2 divided by 2 is a 0.1. So then multiply by a 0.1. And finally, the answer is a 0.882. I could quickly verify and see if that's correct by graphing. second e to the negative x squared. And then this goes from 0 to 2, so if I have this go from -1 to 3, that should be enough to see the graph. And then have the calculator integrate it. Number 7, integrate from 0 to 2. It says the answer is actually 0.882, so we did a good job on that one. Part B, the midpoint rule, the work is almost the same. So you start with delta x is still the 0.2. You would look at the interval from 0 to 2 and say, well, the first interval is going to go from 0 to 0.2. The last interval is going to go from 1.8 to 2.0. And then with the midpoint rule, you need to know what's the midpoint here and what's the midpoint here. So between a 0 and a 0.2, the midpoint is 0.1, and this one is 1.9. If it's not this obvious, you can always just take these two numbers and average them. So then we can have the calculator do the whole thing for us. It would be sum this sequence. So this is the width of a rectangle. To find area for a rectangle, you need to know the width and the height. So the width is a 0.2. The height is the e function. And then just tell it that x is the variable and that x is going from the 0.1 to the 1.9. And the last part is the increment is always delta x. So we've got second list, we need the sum part, second list, we need the sequent part. The expression is just e to the negative x squared. Start at 0.1, end at 1.9, and the step is a 0.2. And then the answer should be pretty close to 0.882. Oh, there's a problem. As you can see right here, I forgot to type in the 0.2. That means everything is supposed to be multiplied by a 0.2. Multiplied by a 0.2, 0.78. Let me just double check that. Some sequence. Aha! Glad I double checked that. It goes from 0.1 to 1.9. Okay, now multiply by the 0.2 that I had forgotten to type in. There it is, 0.882.